idea for all this really came from a dream?
Yes, it did.
Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Stacey Jewell. Stacey is the owner of Homeostaceis, a lifestyle brand for home, spirit, and body. This brand is a culmination of her entire life's work and merges all of her interests and skill sets into one brand. She has a passion for conscious living that promotes wellness for both humanity and the earth. She takes joy in living a lifestyle that promotes minimalism so that there is time for the important things such as healthy relationships, the freedom to travel, and the opportunity to experience. Prior to Homeostaceis, she was a trained financial analyst and business manager for both the for-profit and nonprofit sector. She has a deep love for and connection to the metaphysical aspects of life. When she's not building her brand, she's out hiking and exploring with her daughter. Stacey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so
Hello,
much.
Stacey.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you.
It's nice to have you and bring in the Aquarian energy for us.
Absolutely.
It's one of those
Doesn't
days
usually
over here.
disappoint.
Yeah, we need more water.
My brother's an Aquarian. I feel quite at home around Aquarians.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's when nobody else understood him, I did.
It's a difficult sign to understand. I'm not even entirely sure an Aquarian understands their own self. So
That's part of the beauty.
Mhm.
all that mystery reflecting water. Definitely.
Absolutely.
I loved in your bio, I loved seeing the modeling stuff because we both have that in common. And so that was fun to see. I didn't know that. When Jerry first said he booked you, I just went and saw your new podcast that you were doing. And you had some really great guests on there so far. So when I dug in a little bit deeper, it was nice to see that. It's fun.
I model too.
Yeah, no.
Data model. It's
Jerry.
data modeling, but it's still modeling.
That's right. Counts. Yeah, no, that was definitely an interesting time of life when all that was going on. It was definitely something I had always wanted to pursue for a good portion of my life, but a lot of fear got in the way from me pursuing it earlier. So it was definitely trippy, the whole experience. It's an interesting industry for sure.
Oh yeah. I when I left, I was so glad, and my mother got me into it. She was out there in New York with Ford, and it's crazy. But I think everyone that gets into it and survives it is better for it.
Absolutely.
You come out with a whole different perspective on the smoke and screen and personalities and yourself, and it's crazy.
But like 10% less soul, right?
Well,
Something like
I
that.
mean, I don't know about that.
Depends how far you sold out.
Yeah, I know, really, truly. It's like any other industry, I suppose, in those ways. But so let's just dive on in. So here we are. This is our dream section, and people are getting so confused between Nox Mente, which was our first baby, and then our second baby is the obelisk. And this one really focuses in on dreams, but we meander. I like meandering. And since you're an Aquarian, I hope we meander.
I got a meandering for you.
Absolutely.
Here we go, right away.
You can now go to everythingisdemons.com to get to our website.
Is that what you sent me, Jer?
No. Yes, I did send it to you.
Everything, that's Jerry's like hashtag, everything is demons. It's like his baby. Now I guess he has a,
I own the domain. I own the domain now. Everything is demon.
Oh dear.
I thought it was hilarious. Okay. And I got to thank Rimstick for bringing that up. Yeah, it's trending. Everything is demon. All right.
Jerry's really pushing that. It's like his thing.
And the best part is I don't believe it. So
yeah, no, it's like his joke. So it's funny that it's a site. It's like, that's Jerry.
What is Instagram? All right, exactly. I'll shut up now. Go for it.
You don't have to shut up. And see, that's why I need you on cam. Anyway, let's go. So again, welcome to the dream. Getting into my serious voice. So let's talk, let us dive back into your early days, and let's look at what you can recall of the stuff that sticks out that is pushed way far back as far as you can recall. And this can be anything. Let's just pull out any detail you can find.
Wow, taking it way back. Well, I feel like I have a pretty good recollection of the early years. Um, definitely some memories are more vibrant than others, but as far as memories go, it's funny, that I'm an Aquarius because the memory that just came to my head was actually when I was learning how to swim, and I grew up in South Florida, so you pretty much learn how to swim before you can walk, just because you're surrounded by so many different bodies of water. And I just remember swimming before I could ever do really anything else, couldn't even effectively speak. And I remember my dad snatching me up out of the pool because there was a pygmy rattlesnake like swimming directly behind me, like coming after me. It was aggressive. And I just remember that like it was yesterday. So like going back to like one of my first memories, I think it's that because I had to have been like, I don't know, 1, 2, maybe somewhere in there.
Oh my God, that actually dips into two of my bad things for me: snakes in water. Oh,
Yeah. No, it's
jeez.
just funny, that water was such a big part of my life at such an early age, considering my sign. And even though Aquarius is an air sign, it's just as much an air sign as it is a water sign, because we're the water bearers. But
Yes. Yeah.
so it's interesting that, I just kind of tied those two things together as we're sitting here talking about it, because that's not a question you get very often, like what's your first memory? But yeah,
This is the thing about Florida too that's always intrigued me. So I love the Panhandle the most, but there are so many creepy crawlies down there, and it's so hot most of the year that for me, I need moss and fern. And
totally.
so, like it's just
Yes.
too hot for me. It's too intense and too many creepy crawlies. And the creepy crawlies are always, I think I can override the heat and everything. It comes down to all the creepy crawlies. The first time I consciously remember a palmetto bug is in
Yeah,
you know how big they are, and if there's like a law in the universe when they're flying, and if you're in the room, they fly so terribly they're going to get you. They're going to come at you.
totally. Yes. Yep. Yeah, they're horrifying. If you don't like roaches, then you're in for a treat if you meet a palmetto bug.
they're like dinosaur size.
My
Yeah,
cat,
they're
my
massive.
cats love to eat them. So
Oh my
Totally.
God.
It's a good snack.
Oh yeah, that's a meal. So anyway, see, this is already Aquarian. So okay, that's a cool first memory. It's interesting. So I want to dig into that a little bit. So with the idea of snakes, did that affect how you view snakes later on? Where did you inherently have a fear of them or not?
Um, I think people have fear of snakes because other people want them to have fear of snakes. I don't know. It's
Hmm.
this really weird like club that just seems to form. So in my earlier years, I feel like I had a fear of snakes because other people that were surrounding me did. So it was like an adoptive fear, if that makes sense. But now in adulthood, I get really pissed off when people post on like, Facebook or whatever that they killed this grass snake that was in their yard. Like it really like kind of infuriates me. Like I just think that, a snake's just out there being a snake, and I'd hate to be
Yeah.
killed or punished because I was just in the wrong spot at the wrong time. So I try to have empathy, especially for other creatures, that they're just out there doing what they do. So whatever fear I did have of snakes in earlier years, I feel like I kind of just trashed any of those ideals and just kind of started seeing things for what they were or are.
Well, where I want to take this, I did have a fear, and I think it was exactly like you said. It was an introjection from those around me, and then I went to
Hmm.
own Minnie and be part of herpetological societies. And when I was belly dancing, I had snakes and stuff. I love
Hmm.
snakes, but
Hmm.
I did have that fear, and I think what you're saying is exactly right. And this is what happens to us.
Hmm.
It's a psychological principle. But where I wanted to go with that was did you remember early on having snakes in dreams?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think back to some dreams that have been prevalent in my life. I'm not saying that snakes were all that present, but what is often present is spiders.
Mm.
So I dream a lot about spiders.
So just since we're here, let's look at some of that. How does grandmother spider show up in your dreamscape? And if she's transformed, how is she transformed?
So I've had spiders show up in a few different capacities. My most recent dream, um, it wasn't that I was afraid of spiders or anything of the like. It's just that they just kept replicating and I couldn't contain them. So that when I start to I'm a like I said, like you guys said in my bio, I'm an analyst by trade. I'm also Aquarian, so they kind of just go hand in hand. So I mean, for me, it's usually not enough to just say, oh, okay, this happened or this dream happened and we're just going to move on from it. Like I like to do a full on analysis of it, start researching what things mean, just it's like the obsessive compulsive inside of me. But it's not usually a fear of spiders. It's usually just like, control things. Like I can't control them or they're trying to control me or something of the like.
So in the dream, when they're trying to control you, how could you give us an example of how that works or plays out?
Sure. So, like, I think one of the deep, deep things, for me, and I hate to keep saying about being Aquarian, but honestly, like, they're textbook traits of Aquarius. Like any other Aquarius you run into just seems to have the same thing. Aquarius the feel of restriction or anything like that. So when I've had that in dreams, and more specifically with spiders, it usually has something to do with me being caught up in the web. So meaning that I can't get out on accord of my own free will. Something's binding me there.
Yeah, that makes good logical sense.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's move back to the snake in the water. With this early period and other memories that kind of surface around that period, or a little, just young you, what kind of stuff did you find interesting? What was your world about as a very young girl?
So I think like with most of us, we're somehow shaped by our pop culture, or it's at least a really good suggestion to our brains as to what we should be into or dive into. For me, from a pop culture perspective, one of my earliest memories was watching the movie E.T. And E.T. has had such a huge impact, I think, on just kind of the way I view the world. Even as a small child, I was always into things that were otherworldly, namely, being extraterrestrials, and especially at the suggestion of that movie. And if we look back in our history of pop culture, oftentimes we see other species or extraterrestrials or whatever you want to call them being painted in kind of a negative light. It's always seems to be this, propaganda that we're going to be attacked or, that they're out to get us or anything like that. And what really resonated with me about ET is that it was kind of more, a benevolent ET film, even though it had its dark moments with, the FBI and the CIA chasing after them and trying to locate the ship. The relationship between Elliot and ET was just kind of pure, and I think kind of what we all expect to experience in our childhood. It's just this mystical, magical relationship with these things that we don't know as humans. So for me, I mean, I don't know if it's not very profound, but that movie has always stuck with me. It will always be a favorite of mine. And I would say it definitely helped to shape my worldview of how I feel about the universe.
It's also an allegory for mind control.
I was waiting for it.
It's Spielberg.
Something.
Spielberg, you know, well, I won't get into Spielberg, but
No,
mean,
I totally get what you're saying.
there's a lot of pedophilic overtones in that movie.
Totally.
Watch it again, you know,
in Hollywood.
as an adult, and it's like, oh, geez, this is creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of, like, the whole secret space program, the fakery of that is kind of encoded in that movie. But
yeah.
I digress.
But
No,
on
you don't have to digress. I'm with you on all that.
Oh yeah, well it's overlaid in so much, but then there is that emotional overlay, which is in part of all that Jerry just brought up. But the emotional overlay of Elliot and ET's relationship is a big factor, and it says a lot about people. I mean, it's how I felt about Dumbo and my relationship with the world around me and how I identified with Dumbo and his relationship to those around him. I mean, ultimately, these things are, yes, there's this whole MK thing going on. There's this whole mind control aspect, but there's also this whole how we project into it that becomes an interesting top layer that pulls us in. So I appreciate that as something you brought forward. Definitely. What about, and pop culture, you know, in general, this could be said about pop culture as a general rule. It's, you know, social engineering, really. But that's why we talk about these things. That's why we look at what affected us at different periods in our lives. And then as we move forward and unfold and see how things unfurrow, it's interesting because then we can start to unravel ourselves from that web.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's short of living, you know, in a cave. Most of us have had the same experiences, you know, with pulp culture, whether we wanted to be in it or not. You know, if you're living in this society, we're not going to escape some societal BS that comes at us.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way, this is part of the labyrinth in which we find ourselves. And so for those of us that are seeking, those things become very meaningful later when we, in hindsight, look at how we were bound, very much like in the tarot, the Eight of Swords, in a way.
Yeah.
So back there with all that, so you're in Florida. Usually I think of Floridians as having a pretty hardy relationship with nature. Were you also really engaged with the natural world?
Absolutely. Yes. You know, I lived in Florida up until a point of I was about 25, I think, when I moved up to North Carolina. So now I'm in the heart of the Appalachians. So I'm surrounded by nature literally every day. But even before coming up here, yeah, like my best friend and my next door neighbor was my grandmother. And my grandmother was super old school, you know, grew up in the Great Depression. So, you know, life for her was always meaningful because she was focused on the right things. She didn't get distracted by all of the things that come at us today. So, you know, some of my earliest memories are with her. And, you know, something that we just seemed to do almost on, it seemed a daily basis, was go fishing and just spend time on the lake. And in Florida, I mean, you're going to see a metropolis of life that lives on a lake, whether you're looking at, you know, crawdads or alligators or snakes or birds or turtles, iguanas, you know, all these crazy animals that are just so super mystical to begin with. Like, I don't know, unless you're just completely not paying attention to your surroundings, you can't live in Florida and not have, you know, some form of magical experience there in nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember
Jerry?
all the Gulf Breeze stuff that went on, like, was it 30, 20 years ago? The UFO sightings?
I don't know about those. You'll have to tell me about those offline.
Yeah.
Jerry, well, no, fill us in right now, little.
So there was a group of UFO sightings in Gulf Breeze, Florida. I think it's
I don't know about these either, Stacey.
Yeah, this is not a hot one that I've heard of.
So there was this one guy who had filmed all these crazy UFOs in Gulf Breeze, right off the coast, over the water and stuff like this. Let's see this picture. these kind of crown-shaped UFOs. And
Yeah.
I'll put a link in
Yeah.
chat too, so you guys can see it.
Yeah, for God's sake, don't show it.
No, no.
We'll get in trouble again.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But
We
anyway,
get-
he filmed a ton of these UFOs above the water that were crowned. That's not one of them. Anyway, like this one here.
Nice.
And they were really just crazy looking UFOs.
those
Yeah.
are pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, they're intense.
Yeah, and considering that most pictures of UFOs suck or are blurry or whatever, or and today people take pictures with their phones, so you can't really zoom in on stuff, and the lighting's all automatic, and you can't change anything. This guy actually caught these things with a camera. What's this pack?
This one looks familiar.
I don't think that's the one I was thinking of. But anyway, that's what was going on in Gulf Breeze. I believe it was all a hoax, but
Not shocking.
it did catch the imagination of many.
Totally. Miami has a lot of sightings.
1987 was when it was.
I was not even alive yet.
You were coming down
Yeah,
from the
that's-
clouds.
I was close. I was close to being alive.
So actually with that as a springboard, early so obviously you did have this great relationship with nature, and I love that your granny was your best friend. I'm so with you on that. And fishing's
Mhm.
amazing. There's just
Mhm.
something, oh man, there's something amazing about fishing. Were you a mystical child?
Yes, but I didn't know it. So I grew up staunchly conservative Christian. So I feel like a lot of stories start this way. But so dabbling around with anything mystical was definitely never encouraged. But nonetheless, when you have those abilities naturally, it doesn't really matter whether or not you dabble, it's going to at least come in and out when it seems fit. So I would deal with a lot of different things as a child, but I was never able to speak about them because the risk was too great. So like most of us, we just stay in our little repressed worlds until adulthood and all of those repressions come out rearing their ugly heads, and then you deal with it then. But yeah, when I go back and I think about some things that have occurred, especially in early years, I definitely know now, knowing what I know, that I definitely had abilities then. I was just unsure of what they were.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing to at least be in touch with that early on and allow it to be in instead of pushing it away.
Mhm.
Did it inform your dream world at all? Let's take a little look at young you and how the dream world played a part in your early life.
Absolutely. So I had this dream. I want to say I was probably 4 or 5. And I have had this dream has stuck with me in vivid detail for that long. So I'm 32. I had it when, let's just say, I was 5. So that's a really long time to have a dream stick around in your psyche and you can remember it as if, it happened yesterday. So, and I didn't know at the time. I remember being really confused as to whether it was a dream or if it was prophecy. So I remember just being that young and kind of asking myself, was this on a court of watching something that scared me, or was this really going to happen, or was it real life in some reality? So the dream, I'll just go ahead and tell you the dream or the condensed version. So I had this dream that I was walking through hell, and we can get into the whole aspects of heaven or hell after this. But at the time, growing up, I was very very Christian, so heaven and hell were most certainly a real thing for me then. And I remember walking through hell as if I was like a visitor. So much like you would walk down a prison hallway and you would see everybody in their cells just doing their thing. I had the same kind of thing, but walking through the fiery pits of hell, and just seeing suffering and torture and all these things. So what made it really trippy for me, I think the part that really scared me the most at that moment, was that I could smell burning flesh. Like it was literally in my nose follicles. Like it wasn't a dream. It was 100% happening. And I didn't really know what to make of that at that time. Um, and to just be 5 years old and to see tremendous amounts of suffering, and then have the entire sensory experience happening. So sight, taste, smell. You could taste flesh in the air. Um, and that's a pretty horrific dream for a 5-year-old. Um, and I still don't know 100% the purpose of it, but I'm not entirely sure that I would even classify that as a dream anymore. I think that was something different, but at the time I didn't know any other terminology or any other way other than to just call it a dream and try to explain it. So that was pretty trippy to have.
That's amazing. And it brings in, it's one of those things I'm always looking for is that other sensate stuff.
Mhm.
So to get that so early and the fact that it stayed with you for 30 years
Mhm.
is amazing. So smell and the taste of the smell, the way something on a barbecue,
Yes.
is
Yep.
is remarkable, Stacey. Did you tell your parents when you woke up?
Yeah, I mean, it truly scared me. I think it probably turned me white. And I kind of remember telling my mom, and I can remember the look on her face to this day. Like it's kind of like one of those things, like if you were talking to a child and something really serious was happening, you would kind of downplay the situation in hopes to bring down their fear level. So, like, I could almost see that whole thing happening on my mom's face. Like, she was trying to downplay her own emotional reaction to what I was telling her. So her advice to me was to just, to sleep with my Bible. And that's not really an uncommon piece of advice for a Christian family. They believe that that's the end all be all tool to get anything unwanted away from you. So, I mean, I did that. I slept with my Bible underneath my pillow for a long time. But it's it's just, we could grow up in different families, and I think that there are families that are really open to talking about experiences, and then there's other families that just believe that your experiences are yours and not to necessarily share them. So my family kind of leans more towards that side, that experiences are private. So it was never something we revisited after that initial um conversation about it.
So you said you weren't now you're not quite sure it was a dream.
Mhm.
What do you think it was?
I kind of feel like now that, and perhaps it was astral, that it was literally just a trip to a different reality. Um, so it doesn't, some of the things that happened in it, just they weren't indicative of a dream. Like those things don't happen in dreams. Those things happen in actual experiences that are happening. Um, so that's kind of why I feel like at this point that I literally just probably picked up out of my body at some point, and just kind of went to another place. And I don't know if I went to that's where the whole prophecy thing comes in. I don't know if I went to another place because I needed to see that suffering because it has a purpose for my role here. I don't really know.
Was there Okay, so early on, so let's unravel a little bit more the early you. Did your was there Are your parents still together?
Yes, yes, they are. They've been together for, I don't know, 50 something years, long time.
Okay, yeah. So, and that also is a testament to you. It's very Christian and
Mhm.
that's one of the things I like in Christianity, though, is like this deep commitment people have
Mhm.
to the things they do commit to, the deep Christians. Uh,
Totally.
so, all right. So there wasn't any of that kind of weird strife going on
Mm-mm.
between the parents. It's interesting. I feel like I want more of this this imagery. It's so rare coming from a young child of 4 or
Hmm.
5 with all this sensate stuff.
Hmm.
Okay, so at this period also, were you experiencing what levels of lucidity, let's go there, were you experiencing at that point?
Hmm. That's hard. That's a hard question because like as vivid as that one is, anything surrounding that, it's hard for me to even
Get back
remember
there. Yeah.
now. Yeah, it's like that experience like defined that whole era for me. Like, anything that happened outside of that was just kind of, overshadowed by this experience that like is completely unforgettable. I
Yeah.
know that things happen like because I know, you know, that I would have visits and stuff, from and I don't know if these were things in my imagination or if they were things that were actually there, but all the stuff that they put in fairy tales, like they got those ideas from somewhere. They exist in some reality. So whether that be fairies or, animals that can talk or, other beings, it's just those kind of experiences were not uncommon for me either then, and it's always seemed normal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's never, been taboo to me.
Did you have any relation or kin that was military?
Yes, my cousin is a pretty high-ranking officer in the army. And then,
Okay.
my uncle served in a war, and so the military definitely is in my family. Not any of my direct, so not my parents or my brother, but
Yeah.
around my
And
family.
so also with young you, what was I mean, this just blows me away. It doesn't blow me away. What blows me away is that you remember it because I think we all have that detail we forget. And you
Mhm.
already know that memory and dreams, all this stuff is so transient, and once you try to reach back, it's like dust, what's
Mhm.
what. But
Totally.
the dreamscapes, so in general for young you, and this doesn't have to be way, way back, but young you is has there been a change in it? Was it always that vivid? Was it always a full sensate immersion for you? Or, you know, I guess tell us how the dreamscape has appeared to you generally through your younger life and not where you are now.
Sure. So dreams for me have even into adulthood. It's always been hard to distinguish reality from dreamscape. So when I don't dream a lot, but it seems that when I do dream, they're like powerhouse dreams. And I can directly tie in adulthood my dreaming to the level of meditation practice I have in my daily life. So if I'm not meditating, and I have not meditated in a long time, I won't dream very much. And definitely not ones that are so vivid that I can remember every detail. Now, when I'm actively meditating and connecting in, then those dreams almost become nightly. I will say that all of my crazy train dreams have always happened in naps. That's why I'm not a big huge fan of naps, because when I have dreams that absolutely shake me, it's usually going to be inside of a nap.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. It's a fast way to get into that state actually. That's why they always say wake up and get up and do something and then go back
Mhm.
to reset that program. Okay, so I want to get deeper into this idea, but I wanted to also knock out, I guess early on here, prophetic stuff. I just get a sense that
Mhm.
there's some prophetic stuff in you, and you are an Aquarius, so I don't feel that
Mhm.
that's far reaching.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not ever been so bold that, I've had a dream and then, bam, the next day it happened. But there's been uh, glimmers of things that have come through dreams and then they've happened. And a lot more so, I would say, on my own personal level. So maybe it's, self-fulfilling prophecy, who knows. Um, but I've always had this keen intuition that when I choose to listen to it, I'm pretty tapped in. Um, so it's just, I know that something's definitely there. And one of the biggest frustrations for me in adulthood, once I finally started researching this stuff, was that, most of the time it comes through when it wants to. I would like the ability to be able to do it because I'm prompting it, but that also requires a level of spiritual maturity and practice. So you have to put in the time to be able to get there too. But so the in and outs have been happening, like I said, since childhood, and now in adulthood. I spent a lot of my time trying to figure out how to harness that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's for most of us that are on this path, it's a continuing journey. No matter where you get, there's always more road ahead, which is
Absolutely.
also exciting, I find.
Hmm.
So how
Hmm.
terrible to get to the end of the road. So with moving into the idea of what is prophetic versus intuition for you, where's that access?
Hmm. It's a hard question. Um, I would say intuitive thoughts or transfers for me are full body, so I can completely feel those in every way, shape, or form. Just between like the sensations that you feel in your body, whether that be goosebumps or knotting in your stomach or whatever your telltale sign is for your intuition. So intuition totally takes over my whole being. Prophecy, however, I didn't like thinking back to that dream and what I call, could be prophecy. I didn't have those kind of full body experiences that you have with intuition. I don't know if that really makes sense, or from what I'm trying to convey is coming across.
It does
I
to
guess,
me.
yeah, prophetic is more cerebral. Intuition is more, like I said, total body. You're feeling it in all capacities.
Yes.
So
So, yes, carry on.
no, just so for me, I could distinguish between intuition and prophecy on that particular dream just based on the telltale signs of my body. And I don't remember experiencing anything other than the sensory experiences of smelling and tasting. It was not the same as what intuition gives me.
Let us move into some of the outstanding dreams that you can recall now from your life, if you will.
Sure.
And then just kind of set up the time period. So we have like a timeline in context to this foundation of your young life.
So thinking back to my young life, it seems that I didn't dream journal my whole life. I only started doing that in adulthood, but I really wish I would have done that back then. But when you're young, you don't really care about those kind of things. But it seems, being 32 years old now and trying to think back to those times, it's like all other dreams I ever had, and I know I had them, seem to be blocked out, and the only memory that I have is of the one I shared about walking through hell. And that's another thing that's weird about that dream, is that what is the purpose for that to literally like darken out all other memories or dreams, not memories, but dreams that I had then, so that I'm forced to relive that one over and over. Like I'm trying to find purpose in that. And the only thing that I can come to is that that was a what's that phrase? Uh an Easter egg. That was an Easter egg
Yes.
for my future. So that's the
Yes.
only sense that I can make of it, is that it's not that time has not come yet, but when it does, it's going to put me right back into that moment that dream occurred.
When that dream happened, do you remember the sense of self there? Was there a sense of ego, like as far as who you were at the time? Were you the 4-year-old little girl there, or were you older?
I could definitely say in that dream I was definitely curious. As much as that dream did scare me, it didn't paralyze me to the point where I wanted to be out of it. I do actually remember wanting to know more, and wanting to know why those people had to suffer, or what had caused their suffering, and for them to be there. So I remember being curious, and I remember having empathy for others that were in a much uh misfortunate situation. So I
Mhm.
don't, I know at that time, when you're 4 or 5 years old, unless you've had some really heartbreaking experiences in your life, you're still pretty innocent. And you're
Yeah.
still trying to see things without, rose colored glasses on. You're trying to just actually see things for what they are and understand them. So I would definitely say I was coming from a spot of curious and empathetic.
And so with if we move forward, what is the next dream that stands out for you in your life from there
Hmm.
that you can recall?
I'm gonna go just straight to the ones that I had this year, because I would
This
say that
that's
this.
fine.
Okay, perfect. So this year, I would say I had my spiritual awakening probably 2 years ago. My spiritual awakening came with pregnancy and childbirth, so that was probably the catalyst that pushed me even into the things that I research now and what I dabble in and all of those things.
Well, give
So
us a
two.
walk us
Mhm.
into the dreams you're having now with your spiritual awakening. So give us a little synopsis of that.
Sure. So, now I would say being awakened on this side definitely caused a different style of dreams. You know, dreams in my early 20s typically had to do with self-sabotaging behaviors. So those were just coming out in forms of dreams. So I would call those dreams shallow, if I needed to give it a designator, because they were just things that were of, you know, earthly, worldly nature. And then when the awakening happened, it was like things were coming through that were actually of meaning and purpose, and were lessons on how to live and how to balance and to view different world views, and not to be so judgmental. So I would say the dreams on the awakened side were much more beneficial, because they actually felt more like teachings. So if we fast forward to this year, like most of us, we experienced some form of joblessness because of COVID. So I work in the entertainment industry. So if anybody's been alive in 2020, there's not really been much entertaining that's happened. Um, so I was out of work for 5 months. I literally just went back 3 weeks ago. Um, so I had a lot of time on my hands, to do all the things that I wanted to do, so like a meditation practice, journaling, tarot, all these different things that you would want to do, but you just never have time because you have a family and a life that you have to live and slave over in order to put food on the table. So during this time that I really just had this ability to connect with myself, um, all of these dreams became, um I'm going to just say they became astral. Like they weren't dreams really, they were experiences. It's funny because I was weaving in and out of time space. I could see time space. I could get myself into moments of history and walk around in those moments and see what was happening. So to call them dreams is just kind of, it makes me laugh now, because those are so different than just like dreams that I had in the past. This is like Dream World 2.0 after the awakening. Um, and like I said, dreams for me are completely tied in with my meditation practice. So if I'm like completely zeroed in and balanced, then I'm having some pretty amazing things happen. If I'm caught up in myself or my ego, then I usually just have surface dreams, and most of the time I can't even remember them.
Oops, I thought I was muted. Yes, there's a the meditation especially for me is a key in the deeper work we can do with in the dream. And of course the lines become very blurred, and anyone that follows anything, listens to anything I talk about understands where I'm always kind of walking that liminal edge. And so that is it's integral. And so it makes complete sense to me when you say this. So with this year that has unfolded and the time you've had to take a deeper dive and work on self, get into self, start doing this other kind of work that can fall to the side. What are the fruits that have come forth? Give us some images, some symbols, some stuff to chew on.
Sure. Oh, yeah. This year's been an amazing year, and for the most part, I've written down any of my really profound experiences, and these aren't necessarily dreams, but I will say that they're a product of being open to the dream world. Just some experiences that I've had this year, just with other beings, and reaching out to them, and just some really magical things that have happened. So, for example, there's been a few moments this year, but I can't remember what date it was, but it was like a mass world meditation. So I decided with a friend that I was going to go ahead and, participate in that. And so I live in a really beautiful setting. Like I said, I'm in the heart of the Appalachians. So these beautiful, lush mountains. It's like a rainforest here. It constantly rains. So everything is just super green, beautiful, mystical. So I'm sitting on this hill doing this mass meditation with however many people in the world are participating, and it was the most amazing spiritual experience that I think I've ever had. It's just like the clouds opened up and like the sun shone upon me in such a way that was so ethereal, and like I literally just started crying, like just absolutely sobbing. And it was like this feeling that came over my entire body. It's just like it was like a hug from the inside, and it was just like it felt so like in this world that we live in, oftentimes it feels so alone, but in this moment I felt like I was backed by the entire universe, like so by all of the benevolent beings that take up residency here in this universe. Like I just felt they were all with me, and it was like a pat on the back, like a you've got this, like welcome to the club. Like it was just really amazing. And if anybody knows me that's listening, they know that I'm not like much of a crier. I'm not much of an emotional person. That's not really that shocking for an Aquarian. Um, so for me to embrace emotions and to just burst out crying is so against the egoic front that I usually have on. So, I mean, for me, this year has been 100% about embracing emotions, the good, the bad, the ugly, because, everything that's been a product in my life that was not desirable for my own self has come from the suppression of emotions. So I decided that this year was the year that I was going to start dealing with some of those things. And that's been difficult because, you're 32 years old in body, but you have the emotional intelligence oftentimes of like a 4 or 5 year old, especially if you've been repressing them for that long. It's like coming up and growing up all over again, but you're expected to be a functioning adult, and you're judged if you're not that. Um, so the whole year, I mean, everybody says that 2020 is blown, but for me personally, it's been one of the best years for me, just from a growth perspective.
Oh, absolutely. This is, if we consider everything a dream, I mean, everything about 2020 is a call to lucidity, to be here
Hmm.
now and realize
Yep.
that this is not a dream, but it's a dream, and we're awakening within it, those of us who are recognizing that
Yep.
idea.
Hmm.
So, what, so in this year of 2020, do you have specific dreams that you can share that have come through? And have any of them felt prophetic at all? Or, some down in the country, they call it dreaming true.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything like that, has anything popped up in that vein?
Yes. So I've had some, I'm gonna say a dream. I think I had more than one, but I could only really recall this one. Um about some like Hitler style stuff, which if we see what reality we're living in, that's not very far fetched. I mean, Hitler didn't think that he was a bad person. He didn't think he was in the wrong. And I think that we have a lot of things that are going on in our world right now by people who don't necessarily think that they're in the wrong. So I just think it was interesting that Hitler popped into my dream sequence, and if there's a lot of other people out there that could pop into a dream sequence too and mean the same thing. I think a lot of the times, Hitler's focused upon, but we have very much the same type of monsters, if not worse, that exist in society today. But I don't know, just going back to that dream and the way it came through, it kind of just seemed like, again, like another prophecy. Um, and the focus of this dream was to really kind of see between the words. So there were obvious words that were being said, but in this plane of the dreamscape, it's almost like I could see words in between words. And I know that sounds like some really trippy high shit, but like I don't know how else to explain it except for the fact that like there was the obvious overlay of like, okay, my subconscious wants me to see this, but there was actually like a message that was very deeper that I really had to focus to kind of see. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Oh, absolutely makes sense. And that the in between is a big deal, especially when we're diving into these kinds of waters. So
mhm.
the in between words, the subtext, all that is at play always. So
Mhm.
it's interesting when you tap into it. So
Yeah.
what can you give us the details in that dream? Set it up and
Yeah,
maybe yeah.
sure. Yeah, he basically he was with a group of, I would say, trusted people in his inner circle. And there was one that was a part of this inner circle, but it kind of like subplanted there. He was in the group, but his he had a mission that he was on, and then me as this active participant in the group. So like I was there, but I could pop in and out of acting in the dream. So I wasn't a player all of the time. I could choose to be a player. And basically, I have like an aside with this other person that's on this mission. And Hitler's just talking to everybody around them like they're just complete dogs, like just the things he's saying, the way he's looking, like just like a complete lack of respect for human life, which we know that was obviously there. And the message was more so from this other person that was on this mission. And basically he and I were there because we both had our own things to deal with in this setup. Um but I can't even explain in words because I don't remember the exact words that he said to me, but he was basically giving me some insider information for my own mission. And it wasn't just, cut and dry. It was definitely something that would be needed to be decoded. Also not shocking for the whole Hitler vibe. Um so I remember taking that information, and whatever he gave me was vital to my next step. And my mission was warrior like, but it was benevolent. And that's not shocking either for me because I've always like kind of identified with the warrior goddess kind of vibe, like, just like the mama hen, the protector of the people kind of thing. So whatever information he gave me, which I wish I could remember the exact words, is something that I needed for my next step. And it's only because of that interaction with this person that I was able to make my next move in my mission.
How dire were the circumstances?
They were pretty dire. I believe even just in that setup, he had one of his inner circle people just like executed right there on the spot, and it was very much a I'm not effing around with you kind of thing. It's just one of those power plays. But it definitely involved life and death. And it definitely involved my role with my part of the mission. The mission wasn't on my back, but I played a pretty big part in the mission moving forward.
And did this feel like it was in the 30s and 40s, late 30s, early 40s, or did it feel modern and that it just had those symbols put onto it?
Both. So I was definitely time traveling in this dream because there was a modern element to me, and there was also a modern element to the other person that was on a mission, even though he was dressed in the garb of that time. The
Mhm.
scene that was playing out was stuck in its proper time period, but I was going there to collect data of some sort that I needed from that particular point in history. And so is the other, I'm just going to call it an agent because it kind of had an agent feel. And
Yeah.
so is the other agent, but he had a deeper role because he was actually in the inner circle. So he was going to have to, he had been doing time there, building up that trust and having enough of an interaction to just be kind of in that sequence with them. But I was able to pop him out and have like a modern day conversation with him, like aside from them, but still also be fully present with them.
And what gave you the idea? Is there a portal? And I think I heard you talking about, oh no, maybe it was someone interviewing you. Was there a portal involved in any way to traverse the time aspect that was going on, the differences?
I'm trying to think of the details and how I got into it and how I got out of it. Um I remember coming into it in the middle of whatever was playing out. So it wasn't like I stepped through a veil or anything like that to get into this dream. But I do significantly remember popping out. So using some form of a tool to get back to whatever spot I needed to be for my mission. So I guess we could call that a portal. It wasn't like a Stargate. It didn't just like open up and I, ran through it, but there was definitely
Yeah.
some kind of mechanism that traversed me to where I needed to be.
And also, so just to get more context to everything, when you think of, because there's ideas of multiverse here, there are ideas of past lives and all
Hmm.
of this. So when you think of that period in time uh, that played out, what are your thoughts on that? Besides the atrociousness of what was going on, do you have any call to that period, like you may have actually lived in that period of time?
I definitely think so because there was a time when I was in high school that I wanted to write a book about a young Jewish girl falling in love with a Nazi soldier, and then somebody pretty much told me, "Well, that's the premise of The Sound of Music." I'm like, "Well, damn it, somebody already got to it." Um, but I do remember wanting to write that book, and we had a survivor, a Holocaust survivor that came to our school when we were young, and he was super old, like he was at the point at that time when that was happening. So I was probably like 15 or 16. That was about the end of any survivors. So I mean, they were all just pretty much, there weren't very many left. So like I remember having this really strong connection to his story when he came and explained, how he escaped with his family from concentration camps and things like that. And I am of German descent in this particular life. My lineage is German. Um, According to the books, my German family left in the Palatine immigration, so that was way before any of this had ever happened. But so there's definitely always been a connection with me to that period of time. So I wouldn't rule out any past life notions with that. Um, uh, Anytime I feel super connected to something, I always tend to believe that there's something more there. Because otherwise, why would you be so connected? There's so many things that come across your plate on a daily basis. like what causes something to stick or not. And so I have to tend to believe that if something's sticking, it's because there's a valid reason or a memory or a prophecy tied to that particular emotional reaction.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. This is why I love all this stuff. It's open field for us to ponder and weave through with ideas and all that.
Hmm.
So when you came out of this dream, and this was this year, what was the mood that came out of the dream with you?
Um, I would say the mood after that particular dream, it seemed to be urgency. Uh, and I say that because came out of that dream feeling like I needed to act and feeling that I was not living up to the full potential as to why I'm here right now and why I chose to be a speck on this earth at this particular time conversions. And I mean, to be honest with us, I think most of us in this realm that, dabble in these things are often pondering what our calling is, what our purpose is, if we're doing the right thing, if we're doing enough. It's all that egoic stuff that comes in, because really all we need to do is just be. I mean, not that we're not going to miss anything that's meant for us. But it's funny, especially for a personality like mine that has to psychoanalyze everything. It's really hard to just be. And I have a Piscean friend that has always encouraged me to live in this moment and just kind of get out of, needing to plan 72 years ahead of myself. Um, so with that encouragement, like this is the first time in my life that I've ever probably lived in the now and in the present. And I truly don't worry about tomorrow or next week. And just it's really freeing to be in that kind of a mind space. Um, but coming out of that dream, going back to that, it definitely felt like urgency. And it definitely felt like there was something that I needed to be doing for my role, but I was missing the mark somehow, that there was something that was covered up that needed to be uncovered. And so I kind of just set out on a path from there of trying to figure out what that is. I still haven't figured it out, but
Have you had dreams around that dream since it was this year?
I've had other dreams. Wouldn't say I had any like prequels or sequels to that dream. Um Going back to the spider one, that we talked about kind of towards the beginning, the
Yeah.
the most recent spider one I had was just like literally just had all of these spiders that were just flowing out of everywhere, and like I was trying to keep them all contained, and they didn't want to be contained. And like, so that was another one I was trying to figure out, what's that. I mean, that sounds like anxiety coming through in the shape of a dream.
Maybe
Well,
not.
well, yeah. So let's dig into that. Can you set that dream up and tell us about it?
Sure. It's like one of those dreams that felt quick. I don't really know how long it was, but it's not an extremely detailed dream. But I just remember, like, so these spiders started off as, like a few. So you can deal with a few things coming at you. So I was trying to put them like in this like a terrarium, so like almost like an ant aquarium, those aquariums you had when you were a kid, that like, no, I don't know what
The
ant
ant
farm.
farms.
There we go,
Yeah.
not an aquarium, it's a damn ant, not a fish. Uh, so I remember like trying to put these spiders like in this ant farm, and like, three or four, okay, I'm picking them up, I'm putting them in there. I wanted them to be safe. That was the thing. I was like, no, like this isn't good for you to be out here. And then like all of a sudden they just start multiplying at like rapid speeds. It's kind of like if you've ever encountered a mama spider that had 52 million babies on her back. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what happened.
It's
So like
creepy.
all of these spiders just start busting the hell out. I'm like, oh man, like I don't have enough hands. Like I started looking around for like other people to help me. I started like looking for tools to like start scooping them up. And then like somehow they get in this like laundry basket. So I must have started inside the house. So like if this they get in this laundry basket. So I take this laundry basket outside to start like shaking out all these spiders. And this part was kind of funny. I literally see like spiders flying by my eyes at like matrix slow speeds, like, and like really having like a moment with these spiders that are flying by my face. And it's just like it was super trippy that like all this is happening. I'm like, I just wanted to contain like 3 spiders, and then all of a sudden there's like 4 million that I'm trying to contain. They're not having it. Like they're all over everything. I'm having to shake things out outside. It just got really chaotic really quickly. And I remember at the end of the dream, I just kind of gave into the fact that there's a million spiders around and they're going to do what they're going to do. And that I just have to sit back and be, and like, that maybe I could learn something from this experience instead of trying to fix it. And that was like pretty much the whole entire dream, but it was super trippy.
Did they feel so? I don't get a sense of, and in general with you and animals, your wonderful stance with the beings we share this realm with,
Mm-hmm.
of fear or anything like that. So there was no fear factor here, correct?
No fear. Just felt like it was out of control, and I was really trying to not control them for my own sake, but control them for what I felt was their safety, and
Yeah.
they just weren't allowing that.
Yeah, that's interesting. When would you say that was?
That was probably May. Probably happened in May.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And so there's a lot going on with spiders and spider dreams right now. I'll just let you know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just personally had a crazy spider dream, that I don't know who I was talking to about it. I think James Bartley, actually. Anyway, and so yeah, there's some overlap going on with the spiders right now that I'm intrigued
Definitely.
by. What
Mm-hmm.
about other dreams that are pop out dreams for you in this period since, say, the lockdown?
So the Hitler one came to mind, the spiders. I know I have them written down in journals. I should have taken a little peeksy at those before, but I don't know. I haven't had dreams as of late because I really kind of shut down to that possibility in the last couple months. Um, More so because I didn't feel the need to go into dream space, because all of that was happening for me in dream space has actually been happening in nature for me. So I haven't really felt the need to go into that space mentally because I'm getting it in other ways. So I've had some really magical experiences with animals this year. So this summer during lockdown, I did the Great American Dream, and I got in my car and I drove from to Utah. Was being my final destination, and I did this all by myself. I kind of was having dates where I could just drive and think and be with my own self. And so while I was doing this, I stopped at a few national parks. So I visited Arches and Canyonlands, which are in Utah. Mesa Verde, Great Sand Dunes. So like all of the beautiful, pure energy. So like I distinctly remember going on this hike. And I live in North Carolina. It's not uncommon to see deer. But when
Right.
I had an experience. Mm-hmm.
No, I was agreeing in where you are in
Oh,
Appalachia.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So I had this experience with these deer on a path in Colorado, and like they were very close to me. I mean, I'd say maybe 10 feet away from me. And like we literally just had like this telepathic communication. Like there was an understanding between each other. And my opinion of animals, I've always had a high opinion of animals, but like in the last couple of years, I've really made it a point to become at least vegetarian, and at the time I try to be vegan as much as I can. So I would say, and that's just a personal thing, I don't have any judgment towards anybody in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But since I've had this newfound connection to animals because of choices that I've personally made, like the experiences have been more amazing than I think I've ever had in my life. So just having like this telepathic communication with these deer and this understanding, and it was deep. Like I can't even really like explain it. There's just like, deer are known for being so gentle. Like you just look into a deer's eyes and there's just this sense of like peace about them. But they're all as gentle as they are. They're as much paranoid as they are gentle. So, they kind of live in this dualistic realm in their brain. Like there's a definite split there where they're trying to live in nature and take it for all of the peace that it has to offer, but because of the relationship that they've had with humans and other predators, they're constantly on guard. So I think that it's really metaphorical for our own lives. Like we all seek peace, or most of us seek peace and want to live in this fairy realm. But at any given point we have something coming around the corner at us, which causes us to be on our guard. And so it was just really magical with that little school of deer. They were just really sweet beings. And in the same hike, I came across a baby bear and its mother,
Oh,
which can be scary when you're
yes.
hiking for sure.
Was it a black
Unfortunately, I
bear?
wasn't. It was no, it was a brown bear. It was not. I don't think that they classify them as grizzlies, but they are brown.
Yeah.
Um,
There was a bear
but
in my
I was thankful
subdivision.
I was not in between.
Sorry,
Is it a black one or a brown one?
it was black.
It's crazy
Oh,
though that
they're
it
sweet.
was down in a subdivision.
Yeah, totally. You might see more bears than I have up here. Goodness, I've only seen like one or two.
That's the first bear I've ever seen in my life.
Oh,
Really?
oh my.
Well, it's your spirit animal.
I don't think so. It's an octopus, my spirit animal.
Oh my. Okay, so Stacey, back to your bear experience.
Derailed. So yeah, in the same little hike there, I come across a baby bear and its mom, and I was really thankful that I wasn't in between the two. They were congregated together because that could have gotten bad quick. But I kind of just got off the path at that point, and I went and like kind of hid out in a little grove, because I didn't want them to like circle back behind me and cut off my path like back to my vehicle. So I just kind of like sat back for a little bit, and I let them have their space and do their thing and just kind of observe from a distance. But I mean, just things like that, and then just other things like with elk, like herds of elk. Just and elk make such beautiful, magical noises, and they're just so majestic and glorious. And
They are.
birds,
Yeah.
like birds, just having really deep connection with birds, and it was just it was insane. Like, and then in that same trip, I had an experience with a UFO. So I mean, it was literally just a trip of amazingness all the way around.
Now you got to give us the UFO experience.
Sure. I mean, I've had plenty of UFO experiences, but I'll tell you about this particular one. So I'm there in beautiful Colorado, and I mean, there's doesn't seem to be an ugly place there. It's all just so magical and has great energy. And I kept feeling this strong pull. This is the last night I'm in Colorado, so the next day I'm supposed to make my trek back towards North Carolina. So the last night I'm there, I feel this huge strong pull to go outside on to like the porch that was just overlooking kind of this open field and these beautiful expansive skies that are full of stars because there's not light pollution there. And so whatever this call was, I obeyed it. I honored it, because it was not letting up. It was a call that began at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So even before it had been dark or anything like that, like those telepathic prompts were there from whatever wanted to greet me. So I decided to honor these feelings, go outside. I'm looking up in the sky, and your eyes can often play tricks on you when you stare at the sky. So taking in these tall beautiful grasses, and I'm seeing all these different lights come up from the grass, and like I mean, I know people have different beliefs, but for me, there's only one logical explanation to that, and it's fairies and the way that they were moving and flitting about. Like, I know the difference between a lightning bug and things like that. Like these fairies, I call it a fairy rave. It was like a full on fairy rave that was happening in the grass because there must have been like 20 or 30 different colored lights. There was blues, there was greens, there was whites, yellows, reds, pinks, purples, like, so all these trippy colors, and um just interacting with one another, but also like interacting to the telepathic thoughts that I was also sending their way. So it's like this whole fairy rave is happening in the grass, right? So then I get the notion that I want to go back to the skies. I'm going to move back to checking that out. And over to my left side is this there's this white ball. Then I'm like, it's just a star. And then like this white ball just starts making all these erratic moves, and I'm like, oh, this is not a star. So I start having like the telepathic communication with this ship, asking it to come closer, asking it to do, to shine its light, or to do a sign or a signal that they're getting like the thought transference
A
that I'm
power
sending out
up.
to them.
They call those
Yes.
power ups.
So like I like it. Well, I have a term now. So I'm doing all these things, and it's making all of these trippy movements. So like see loop de loops, and it's orb like, but it was pretty far away. So I imagine it was actually a pretty decent sized ship to be the size that it was appearing in the sky from its distance. So after a little while, it wouldn't really ever get any closer than its closest point, and I wouldn't even say that that was super close. Definitely close enough for me to like make out like shapes and the placement of like light and stuff on it. But after it wasn't interested in coming any closer than what it did. I kind of just called it a night. But like that whole experience was just really, really special between the fairy rave and the UFO experience. Like I knew my intuition was telling me that there was some magical energy that was happening out there, and that I needed to go be a part of that experience. So I was really happy that I listened to it because it was definitely magical.
Oh, yeah. So, and you had led into the idea that you've had a relationship with having UFO experiences over time. How far back does that go?
Mm-hmm. Um, Physical UFOs, I would say the first time that I saw those was actually more so in adulthood, so in the last couple of years. But the presence of beings has always been a part of my life, and some of them have shown themselves to me. This is funny, Jerry. Your everything is demons. Hashtag. This is going to kind of come in with that. For whatever reason, and I don't know if I want to call them demons. I don't know what I want to call them. They're just other beings, and what they are is it's of no judgment to me. But like for the sake of giving something a name, I've always had a connection with, more so they've had a connection with me. I don't know that this was anything of my own choosing, but for whatever reason, dark energy, so demons, just darker energy, has always been attracted to me. So it's always put itself in my path. It's asked to be recognized, addressed, make itself known. I've had to be like, for whatever reason, they're into my energy, and they don't have a problem showing themselves to me, and I don't have a problem seeing them. Maybe when I was younger, I was a little bit more fearful of it, but I just understand now in adulthood that everybody or everything, every being has a job to do. Um, and to label it good, bad, and different, whatever, it's just not about that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to get hung up on those things because, if you look back in the Bible and things like that, like, you know, God often sent his angels to do his dirty work.
Yes.
I mean, the demons were kind of getting like the more fun jobs, if there's such a thing. It's always the archangels that are raining holy hell on
Oh,
everybody.
yeah.
So,
The archangels are
I
scary.
decided that, yeah, for real. So I decided that these beings are coming to me, and they have an attraction to me for a reason. And the very least I can do is just give a listen. I think that's what most of us want, is just somebody to listen to us, to hear us out. And who am I to say that, these beings aren't able to do that as well. Like, just because somebody talks to you doesn't mean you need to adopt their energy. But giving just anything the platform to speak, I mean, I think you can hear things out. But for whatever reason, that kind of energy has always been attracted to me, and I don't really understand it. I would like to understand it, and there are ways for me to understand it. I'm just not ready to go there yet. Um, but I always thought that that was interesting.
Have they popped up in your liminal spaces, so in the dream realm?
Yes. Yeah. So I've had. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to explain because there's some psychological term for this, which is I can't remember the name of it, but it's just to me it's BS. Like, I know what I experience and I know what happens, but I've had, and I think a lot of people have had the sensation of where they're being gripped tightly by a being, and I've had that kind of experience where I'll just say, for the lack of a better term, I'll say a demon was on me, like behind me, in a hugging grip that would not let me go. And I've had that experience lots of times, even from childhood.
It's like a
So
sleep,
it's
like a sleep paralysis kind of thing.
yes, yeah, that there's the term.
Okay.
The just like, oh, it's all in your imagination kind of thing. And like, that's all fine and well if that's what people need to tell themselves to go to sleep at night. But like, what you experience, you can tell fact from fiction. And again, just kind of going back to the dream where I could smell and taste like flesh, like similar things happen. Like, I can feel the hot air on my neck from the being breathing. Like, there's just all these sensory things that happen that you can't just write off. Like, it was a part of the experience. So I noticed that I end up having that kind of experience when I'm closed off, when I'm not really wanting to address the emotional side of me. If I am open to emotions and wanting to feel and experience, then a lot of the times they'll just pop into my airspace. So like, I can immediately feel when I have a being with me, in my space. It's just instant, and but they pop in less abrasively when I'm open to it than when I'm just completely closed off. It seems like that's when I said either I can choose to give them a presence or they're going to make their self known. So like, I choose the more less stressful path, I guess. So I'd rather something just pop in with me and us be able to have a conversation, than to feel forced or controlled, if that makes sense.
Why do you think they have chosen to make themselves known to you in such a repetitive way?
Oh my gosh, it's the $1 million question.
I
I think
know.
when I talk to anybody about this, that's the number one question, is like, I just want to know. I want to know why. Like, what do I have that they want? What experience have I had that they want to know more about? Like, it's hard to not even be able to limit it down to, okay, do I have something that they want? No. I experienced something that they want to know about. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't have any of those answers. And like I said, I can get those answers. There are methods to be able to have those conversations, but I'm just not sure that I'm ready for those conversations, or that I'm trained enough to have those conversations, because I definitely don't want to give over my own personal power, to something that's just a little bit more cunning and manipulative. So like, I don't want to accidentally give away, too much, I guess. I don't feel prepared to go down that path yet.
It could be just as simple as the fact that you listen,
Yeah.
that you
Yeah,
can you
maybe.
can communicate with them. Most people can't.
Mm. Hmm.
Are
That's a good
you,
point.
do you know your blood type? Are you Rh negative?
No, I'm O positive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, you never know. We're all just reaching to understand these lines of communication that seem to happen with certain families, especially. Did any of your family ever mention anything on this level? And I know they're deeply Christian, and
Hmm.
and also, as you said, they keep things more to themselves. So
Hmm.
it's possible they did and didn't divulge this information as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I would be interested to know, because Everybody in my family is really artistic. Like my dad went to school for architecture. My mom and my brother are both really good artists in terms of like drawing and stuff. I'm really creative in senses of like design and jewelry and things like that, and like putting like the modeling world, putting together outfits, stuff like that. So we all have these really like deep creative aspects to us, and I feel like a lot of the times people who are creators are oftentimes proxies for these things that want to be heard and known. um but again, that's just coming from a pretty closed off emotionally family. It's hard to know if they've had experiences. I know that they have spoken about UFO experiences before, so I definitely know that even with their deep religious beliefs, they are open to life outside of just humans. So I've at least
Yeah.
got that out of them.
Yeah. Is there a connection between, so when we're just talking about brass tacks,
Hmm.
not tax as in what the government does. I know my accent always sounds so crazy. Uh between, so when we parse out these ideas of interdimensional and physical and all that, where are you, where is that for you with this in context to these others?
I mean, in terms of my universal beliefs, worldview kind of thing. I mean, I believe that everything is fractal, so it's all just happening within itself over and over again. And there could be a million different versions of us walking around, making slightly different decisions in different realities. So I don't limit things down to timelines or anything of like that. I guess time is just such a joke. It's so linear. So I mean, I don't like to put anything in boxes, because that's definitely the Aquarian thing. Like nobody Aquarius doesn't want to be in a box. So I'm not going to put things in boxes either. I'm just going to let them exist.
Yeah.
Knowing that in this life I'm never going to have all of the answers, that this is all just experience, or a part that's part of the whole. um so I don't feel the need to have all that. But I also believe that anything is possible. And we've seen, I mean, at least I've seen, I would assume, I'm going to say we, assuming that we've all had similar experiences, where we've seen like just literal shifts in our reality and our timelines. And like something that was one way this day is different the next, even just down to changing color and like Mandela effect. And like I don't know about you, but like I grew up in what seems to be a totally different world than the one that we're living in. My
Yeah.
friend and I talk about this all the time, that, we grew up in a part of the universe where the sun was yellow. Like, I don't know if anybody's paid
Yes.
attention to the sun. It's completely white. It's this white, blinding light. Like, I remember being able to gaze at the sun and not, have like huge radiation to my eyes. And now it's like the sun that we look at, on a daily basis now is just so foreign to what I grew up with. So there's clearly something happening. Like we're not living in the same exact timeline, reality, whatever, that we were 20, 25 years ago. So like when you experience all that, when you experience these Mandela effects or just things that you knew to be true that have changed, you come to the realization that this is a great big universe, and that like all we have is like the tiniest tip of the iceberg. And like what we're going to understand and perceive in this reality is so minute compared to what it actually is. And so I just don't let like I don't let things dictate my experience. I mean, even just it's for somebody who is so I was so black and white. Like things were so either they were or they were not. And now to be in this space where, you just kind of let everything be without defining it is so foreign and so odd to me. Because like and this is also a part of being young, is I believed that I had it all down pat. Like I had the answers, things were definitive. There was no flex in the structure. And then you grow up to realize that everything you've been taught is most likely a lie or distorted, and you're literally starting over like a baby, just relearning and accepting and retraining your mind just to be open, because we're raised to be closed-minded and to silo our beliefs and to silo ourselves into peer groups that agree with us. And anybody that doesn't agree with us is, outcasted. So you just literally have to retrain yourself down to the very basic elements of understanding and learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious about where you land spiritually now, because you've made, we know, uh, and you have this very broad sense of the world that is lovely. I love it. It's very engaging, and I'm there with you. So I'm wondering, what was this path? How did you get here from there?
So it's been a difficult one. And my parents and I have had a lot of conversations where we don't agree. They don't agree with the path that I'm taking, but there comes a point in your life, and especially, I kind of understood this when I had my own child, that like if you're a parent and you're just raising a miniature version of you, you've missed the mark. Like you've missed the purpose of parenthood and what it is to bring a life into this world, because I don't truly believe that we need another us running around. We need whatever that child is to just be, and allow that child and give that child the freedom to explore who they are without projecting our own stuff onto them or creating miniature versions of ourselves. So all that to say, to go back, Christianity was ingrained in me from birth, and I want to say 100% that I do not fault my parents for their beliefs. I do not fault them for bringing me and my brother up in Christianity. They did what they thought was the best for us, and I will never fault my parents for that. But there also comes a point in time where you establish your own beliefs and you test the waters yourself, and you don't just take it because somebody told you to. So growing up Christian literally from birth, um, it basically shaped the way that I did life entirely. So just to give you a depiction of who I was as a child and a teenager. So at my high school graduation, I was given the award for Christian Leader of the Year. And I believe that that was the pinnacle that was the point that set in motion my demise. So it's
Oh,
like they
girl.
give me this, it's the most effed up award that you could give somebody. Like I swear it was just a test. It's like, here, this has now become your curse. So
I've never
the
even
moment
heard of an award like that.
I'm like, what the hell? So I get this award, and I was trying to do everything like a little perfect Christian girl does, saving yourself for marriage, the whole 9 yards, all of that stuff. So it started off what would be picturesque to a Christian family as like the perfect little life, just doing things in what they perceive as the right order. And then somewhere along the lines, I call it my quarter life crisis. I had a quarter life crisis where I just basically was like, screw everything. Like uh, I have always had this weird thing. I don't know if it's ego. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the creator in me, but like to build up life to this point, and then you get bored with it. So you're like, let me rip the rug out completely, start over so I can build my empire again. So like I have that trait in my personality, which isn't always great because it can be really destructive. It kind of reminds me of like Kali Ma kind of thing, just like
Yeah.
destruction of the universe. So like I lived out this little Christian fantasy of being this perfect person and being on an uber high horse that was, just looking back now, was just really repulsive because I was extremely judgmental. um there was no room it's funny because Christianity is a religion of what's supposed to be love, and oftentimes what you end up experiencing from Christianity is varying forms of hate. So I can tell you that as much as I profess to love Jesus Christ and I was this wonderful person, I had a lot of hate in my heart for anything or anyone that disagreed with me. So it was an ugly, from a surface point, it was perfect to people, but from an inside point, it was really ugly space to be in. So, and I knew that I was living an inauthentic life. I was not living my truth. So that's at the point in time that I just decided to burn everything down. Um, and if for anybody who knows me, like I don't half-ass things. So like when I decide to do something, I'm going all in. So this happened and started a perpetual motion of bad choices, years of bad choices, until I finally get to the point of my awakening. Because you have to get sick of your own shit long enough, like, for you to actually make any kind of
Yes.
permanent change or catalyst change. So I
Yes.
was finally to the point where I was like, okay, I'm actually over myself. Like, I don't want to be with this person anymore. Like, this phase has lived itself out, and now it's time for something new. And that's when I started settling down, and that's when the pregnancy happened, and that's when, like, the awakening happened, and the my whole worldview changed. So where do I stand spiritually? I think, don't get me wrong, I think religion has its place. A friend of mine has called religion opium for the masses, and I don't disagree with that statement. Because I do think that there are people that need that kind of structure. But I also think that there are people that don't need that kind of structure, that are completely fine on their own without all those parameters. And that's kind of where I'm living at now. I don't have any opinions about religion other than the fact that I don't like what it did for my own life, but that was my own experience that I disagree with, or not disagree with, just I wouldn't want to go down that again. So for me, I do believe in a creator. I think a lot of the times we get hung up on vernacular. I think a lot of the times we're talking about the same thing and giving it a different name. But more so than anything, I would just like to live in a world that respects other people's opinions and doesn't take their beliefs and establish them as truth. Like, to have empathy and to listen. I mean, what kind of a world would we live in if we took all of those smoke and mirrors away and just kind of got things down to their raw form?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. This is a very beautiful transformation that has happened in you. And it's also, you fall in that generation that's the millennials, and the millennials take a lot of heat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big fan of millennials. Everyone that
Mm-hmm.
that listens to me chatting around the world here knows this. I just love millennials. I know, as with every group that comes in under the big planetary shifts, there's this can be said of all of them, all the generations, that
Mm-hmm.
there's it's parsed out. There's good and bad in a sense, not good and bad. There's a variable group of people that is the mainstream, and then there are these undertow elements that are just pushing it all forward in great ways. And I see that in the millennials. I really
Mm-hmm.
do. So my experience is fantastic, and I'm thrilled about them. I'm a little bit worried about children coming into the world now as it is, because you see what the narrative is, and how
Absolutely.
and that's got to be a little bit concerning as a parent of a very young child, because
Mm-hmm.
they're coming in and they don't know that the sun used to be yellow. They don't
Mm-hmm.
know that there were days before the internet
Mm-hmm.
and the digital overlay that's happening. And now with, craziness, so you cannot have contact with people too close, and the mask, and like all this stuff that's going on is interesting. And I'm just wondering, I have a little bit of trepidation when I think forward with
Mm-hmm.
where we're going. And so it's your generation that is giving birth right now too, especially the majority, a lot of them. And so it's people like you and all these other fantastic millennials I know that understand the differences here, and are actually trying to parse out what my generation X, did that didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of millennials really understanding that mechanism. And
Mm-hmm.
again, this is outer planet stuff. So here we go with this section, and I'm curious where we get back on that liminal thread, the space in between, and
Mm-hmm.
we think about the idea of the transientness, the transience of life, of dreams, of memory, of the past, of the future, of everything that's not really at your focal point of consciousness, wherever that is. What is your idea around death and what goes on with that?
So I would say that my view of death now is much different than my view of death, say a decade ago. Again, kind of just going back to the way that I was raised, the concepts of heaven and hell are used, all throughout the Bible. And whether it's a scare tactic or, just a reminder for right living or whatever the case may be, I don't really know. I can't say what that is. But I know that Christianity is really focused on, well, you need to do this, this, and this, to get into heaven. And you need to, not only do you need to accept this, but you need to, try to live like this. It's all conditional. And for me, that's really like, it's hard for me to accept, because having, lived a little bit of time on this earth, I think things are what we make of it. Like, we very much could view pieces of heaven that exist on this earth, and we very much could view pieces of hell that exist on this earth. So, like, are we creating our own personal heavens and our own personal hells? Or are they physical places? Are there steps to achieve? And I just don't think that, I feel like the achievement-based society is so industrial. Like, that just has man-made stamped all over it. I don't think we have to do anything. I think we just have to be, and even in death, we just be. So, when we die, do I believe that we go to some physical, place of paradise and whatever, or do we go to this eternal damnation? No, I'm not sure I believe those kind of things anymore. I do believe that we are first and foremost a soul inhabiting a body. And so if our soul, and religions even talk about this, that, the soul is eternal and it goes on forever. So, I mean, if all different religions are talking about this, there's truth in every single one of those religions, but there's also a lot of manipulative BS as well included in those religions. So if our soul is eternal, and we're energy, and you can't create or destroy energy, like, we have to go somewhere. So, I mean, for me, the thought of reincarnation isn't far-fetched. There's been things that have happened in my life that are reminiscent of past life. So I just think that we're part of the universe experiencing itself, and that we'll pop in and out as these different figures, for all eternity, or coming to glean the information that our soul wanted to learn. So I think that death is really just kind of like a pop out into the next mission, or the next phase, or whatever it is that you decided that you wanted to do. So for me, living life now on this side with those kind of thoughts, it's really freeing, because I don't have to succumb to all these fear tactics of, living X, Y, and Z so that I get into heaven. Like, I don't know about you, but that whole thought is just extremely exhausting. And
Yes.
just, there's so much pressure. And that's the really tough thing that I have with Christianity, that, the first and foremost commandment is to love God. Well, like, how many times have you ever loved somebody because you were forced to? I mean, that's not love. That's coercion, that's manipulation.
Yes.
Like, and just, so I have a really tough time with anything that starts making mandates like that, because that is just like, it's almost like a mockery. Like, I command you to love me. Okay, well, do you know what love is? Because, like, if we went over that, like, you would see that this is usually not a choice. Like, it's just something that happens, usually unexpected and at all the completely wrong times. And it's just, so for things like that are so stringent like that, I'm just like, no, this can't be. And so, kind of same thing with death, like, so definitive, but, like, every end is a new beginning. So if you believe that, like, then sky's the limit. You're going to come back and you're going to do what you do in different forms, facets, eras, versions, I just think that we as humans, there's something that happens in our brain where we have to make things, very black and white in order for us to accept them. For whatever reason, we have this fear of the unknown. We have the fear of the gray area, which is so amazing because all of the magic happens in that area. Like,
Yes.
things aren't fun when you know what's going to happen. Things are fun when it's an adventure, it's excitement, it's new. Like, so the whole concept of just creating all of these bounds and these chains and these shackles is just really humorous.
Didn't you get the memo? We can't have fun anymore.
No, no fun.
Nope.
Have you, in your dream world, in your dream life, have you had any connection to experiencing people that have died before? So you had forethought with it, or you had it popped up in your dream that someone was going to pass and then they did? Or also, have you had contact with the dead in your dreams, the dead that you know?
Yes, and yes. So anytime something life changing is going to happen in a person that's close to me, so either a close family member or close friends, I almost always sense that inside. I can't always say that I know exactly what it is, but I always know to pick up the phone or to send a text because there's something occurring that would warrant, me needing to be there or to be there to listen to somebody. So I am energetically sensitive enough to usually feel those things happening within people that are close to me. And a lot of the times they don't even tell me then. A lot of times I'll feel that I'll find out after. So then I kind of have to go back and reconcile the time that it happened for me with the time that it happened for that person. And then as far as contact with the dead, I've had multiple visits from both of my grandmothers. So both the grandmother that lived next door to me, and then my mom's mom, who I was really close with, but she didn't live quite as close. I always feel like they've been like my fairy godmother ghost protectors in adult life. It just seems like and it's probably a lot of it has to do is like I have their energy surrounds me because I have their things. Like I have my grandmother's sewing machine and their jewelry and stuff like that. So I have totems that connect me directly to their energy. But even without all that I can sense them and I know that they're there. And we are able to have conversations enough to the fact where they can make something happen in my own physical reality. So whether that be like lights flickering or making a noise, like I can confirm with them that it's them. And I know people could say, well, how do you know that it's them, that it's not some other being that's trying to manipulate you? And all I can say to that is of course it's possible. Anything's possible. But I think at some point we have to trust our own intuition, that nobody's ever going to be able to teach that to us, that's just something we innately know. And I think I think especially when you're in tune, we all have this sense inside of us like, oh, this is energy I don't really want to be around, or this is energy that actually makes me feel really good about myself. Like we all have those kind of receptors in us. So yes, could it be something manipulating me? Absolutely. I'm not going to rule it out, but I also trust my own intuition more so than just some Joe off the street telling me what I should believe. So there's a connection there, and the grandmas show up in my life when things start getting tough. So like if things are pretty even keel, there's not a whole lot of excitement happening, it's usually pretty quiet. But if I'm making big moves, the grandmas usually show up in some way, usually just to say, we support you in this, or just consider taking a second look at this, Stacey. So like they usually have two ways. They're either like cheerleaders or they're like, you might want to pump the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect that. I mean, grandmother energy is amazing energy because they're not your mom or your dad, but they're a mother or a father figure. But they kind of have that edge about them. They have all that life wisdom, which is so invaluable. Like I think that's the thing that frustrates me with the millennial group, is that they're so quick to write off their elders, but really their elders were not born yesterday. They're so aware of things, the same things that, we go through, just maybe in a different way. So like I respect their ancestral wisdom, and ultimately I'm going to make my own decisions regardless of anybody's prompts or advice, but to just know that they're there, like to know that you're not alone even after death, that they're still involved in your life. But I also think you have to be open to that too, so
Yeah,
maybe not everybody experiences it.
yeah. What I mean, that you're exceptional in some of these ways where you're really open to the world around you, and when I say that, I mean the larger idea of it, and this includes all of that in between space. And
Hmm.
you said something very interesting to me, and something that I covet in my own world. Our totems of our personal ancestors, especially those we knew and have a real connection to.
Hmm.
And I cherish those kinds of things. I do not have much anymore after 2 fires. I just have a few things of my mamo and grandmothers, and the grandmother energy has always been my favorite, for the
Hmm.
reasons you stated. But what do you think about totems that connect you to uh, ancestral lines? And so I'm talking about on an energetic level and not on like a physical, materialistic level. Not,
Hmm.
you know where I'm going with that. So
Yeah,
that it's more the energetics and not like your nationalism, you know?
absolutely. Yeah, so I'm that's funny you're talking about that because I'm literally wearing a ring right now that was my grandmother's.
Aw.
And I love jewelry. Like it's jewelry's great, but
That's our
like
synchronicity bell.
is that the make it off the Oscar stage bell? When they're
No, it's
playing music.
whenever there's a synchronicity, we just ring it. I do.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not about this ring and the way that it looks. Of course it's beautiful and things like that, but like I have this piece of her, because she wore it on her body, on her person, has like a forever energetic tie to her, like even though she's not here with me anymore. Like at any given time I feel like I can find her in the spiritual realm. If I need her, like it's as simple as calling upon her. And I feel like this kind of goes back with, this is like an element in other religions too, is having a piece or a certain something from that someone to tie into that energy, or sometimes to do bad things. So I mean using
Yeah.
somebody's, but more so like focusing on the good things, is that it's just it has there's a residue on it that is just part of that other person. And for me it's much easier to connect if I have something like that. I can do it without anything, but it just seems like those kind of things, such as like touching that sewing machine, or feeling this ring, like it's just like a direct tie, and it's like having the direct line instead of like having to call the hotline.
Yes.
um
Yes.
so it's like it's not even about the things or what they are. It's literally just that the number one thing that you miss usually when someone passes on is just the ability to like touch them, like physically connect with them, whether that be a hug or a kiss or holding hands, or whatever the relationship was to you, what it would warrant. Like that's like, you don't think about all those other things. You're just like, oh, if I could just touch you one more time, like, or if I could just hug you one more time, like. And I feel like these things that we keep in our life that are passed down to us are our way of connecting with them, direct line.
Yeah, absolutely. The energetic signatures, and that's part of the patina on material objects that comes down. When somebody's wearing something for a long time, that patina is part of that inanimate object. Or, your grandmother sewing at that sewing machine, there's an energetic field that is part of the patina. It's very visceral for those of us that are able to tap into that. Even
Mm-hmm.
tapping into the idea gains access into the visceral experience because you're
Absolutely.
opening up that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a beautiful thing. And I really appreciated the fact that you call them totems rather than heirlooms. I think that just gives them more. I love the idea of heirlooms. Heirlooms are beautiful and all that, and it's a beautiful word. But totem has a little more punch to it and feels a little more
Mm-hmm.
sacred.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So I'm wondering, we are kind of rounding to that time if we've got questions for Stacey.
I got one, but I wanted to say first, like long before I tried to get in a few times.
Oh, Jerry, I'm sorry. I didn't
It's
see.
not
I
you.
didn't
It wasn't
see
you. I mean, you both were talking. I didn't want to interrupt conversation. Going back to the spiders,
Uh-huh.
that a lot of people talk about spiders representing like an artificial or a non-organic intelligence that lives in the fourth dimension, like in the astral plane. And the spiders manifest physically. I don't know how it works. Astral spiders, Google it, you'll read about it. But that's, there's a lot of talk about that with people who are sensitive energetically. And the question I have for you was,
there is a, just on that spiders, Jerry. That's what I was saying to Stacey, is there's a lot to unpack there,
Yeah.
and it's definitely a rabbit hole worth going down.
Yeah, I've heard people say it's the representation of the insectoid energy that, rules humanity.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's worth going down.
Cliff High was even talking about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of chat
All
about
right.
it.
So the question I have is, do you ever dream of dogs or wolves?
I would say probably I've had some. I'm thinking of one significant dream with a wolf in it, and basically it was just kind of like that deer connection that I had in in my actual reality of connecting with this wolf, and this wolf was very much it was very much a being. Like this was a conscious thinking being just living there, that existence out as a wolf for that particular experience.
Maybe it was your spirit animal.
Yeah, maybe. For sure.
You're very wolfy, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I've always identified with them, because they're just they have they have really intense eyes, and yeah, people often say that about me. I don't know if my picture comes up when I'm talking or whatever.
Oh yeah,
but
we can see you. Yeah.
So like most people, I had people actually be fearful of my eyes before. So it kind of with the wolf, the way that when like a wolf hooks in like on their gaze, and they will stare something down till the death. Like I can really, that really resonates me with the wolf energy, because they're badass. I mean, they can choose to be this motherly, nurturing figure, but if they need to tear in, like they'll also do that too. Like they're very dualistic. So for me, that's always been an animal that I could identify with, because there's this saying that says, throw me to the wolves and I'll come back leading the whole pack. Well, that is absolutely like my energy. I'm not a lay down and die kind of girl. I'm a definitely fight to the death. And not physically, just just whatever that means.
You have the wolf. I have two wolves. You have wolf energy for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that definitely resonates. So as far as dreams, I've not had a lot of dreams with wolves in them, but I do remember that one where that wolf was like a definite being, and there was definitely a telepathic conversation going on between me and the wolf.
Do you
And
recall
like wolves,
what
I mean,
that
just
was?
that one was like when I was probably early 20s. So that's like back before even awakening, or that before I would have even gone further with that. But I just remember being out in the snow and walking, and coming across this wolf that was just doing whatever it was doing. I don't know if it was looking for food or whatever it was, but it's like we were both doing the same thing, but the wolf was an animal and I was a human. So like we had this, like we look up at each other and we have this understanding between each other. It's like telepathic transference, that you do you, I'm gonna do me, but like I completely respect you for everything and all that you are. And like it was again with those deer, it was just like this sense of respect, this deep understanding for something that's different from us, but yet so very much alike. And all I can really remember is just like having this utmost respect for each other in our own habitats. And for that particular point in time, we were crossing paths, but that was kind of an unnatural meeting that doesn't happen in everyday life. But I think that's just so reminiscent of life, that we run into these situations, or we get put into situations that are not typical for our life, but they're either really huge learning experiences, or you get to do something that's so amazing that you wouldn't have had the ability to do in any other situation or setting.
Yeah. Stacey,
Mhm.
I feel like you dropped off there.
No, she's just done talking.
Oh yeah, I'm here. Did my internet go out?
It just felt like an abrupt end.
It happened to be at the end of a
It's the
sentence.
Aquarian in me. I'm keeping you on your toes.
I know you are. I'm always fully engaged in these interactions, though. So that's why I don't look at chat or anything.
Yeah.
All right, Jerry, any other questions?
Nope, that's a no.
Wow, we're like on time. This is amazing.
Yeah.
This has been a lovely, lovely interaction with you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, no, thank you for having me on. It's been great to talk about these things. I really like this pod because you ask questions that like you just don't sit here and like usually have a mental conversation about. So it's like remapping my brain as we speak. It's pretty cool.
I told you it was almost therapeutic.
It is therapeutic for sure.
Well, and you have such a gorgeous photo looking at us on our Zoom here that's very engaging. So when you were talking about the eyes and all that, is like, yes, this is clear. I mean, you've got the dark goddess energy in you. So the Fata Morgana, that, you know, raven-haired.
Hecate.
Yeah, Hecate, raven-haired, piercing eyes, and beautiful. So it has been a great pleasure, and thank you for spending time with us.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely, it's been great.
Did you want to plug any of your stuff that I didn't mention?
Oh no, you did pretty good job at mentioning it all. You have a really, really good spread.
Well, you should plug it again.
So where you can find me at these days is I'm a bit of a nerd and I like a good pun. So my brand is Homeostaceis. I mean Stacey.
I got it.
Too much, but
I got it too. It's good.
So Homeostaceis, with the stasis part being STACEIS.com. Find me on Instagram at the Stacey Jewell. It's probably the easier spot to go to find all my stuff. I'm all linked up there.
Don't pay attention to him.
Oh, I get it now. I get it. Sorry, I'm a little slow. It's 11 o'clock. But yeah, no, just if you want to connect with me there, that's great. I'm usually pretty good about answering things. I'm usually pretty good about answering DMs as long as they're not lewd or lascivious. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
But other than that, yeah, no, just I'm always out there doing something. I'm an ultimate creator, so it usually changes from year to year what it is that I'm doing. I did have the podcast. I'll give a brief backstory to that. So I took a break from the podcast because I was talking about topics that were hot at the moment, and it became an issue with my personal life, with threats, with like death threats. Dear. So yeah. So I took a spot back from that, but I do want to get back into it because wellness and healthy living and all those kind of things in all facets is really important to me. So I would like to shift the podcast to that, but I just needed to take a mental break from that. But you can check out all the past episodes. They're still up and hosted. You can go to my YouTube. There's some great interviews with some really phenomenal people on there too.
Great. And I've put links for all that in the show descriptions and in the show notes in our Discord channel, which I'm pretty sure you joined, so people can reach you there too.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. Well, thanks again. It's been great talking to you finally after a month. And thank you everyone for listening. We've had a great evening, and we'll see you next week. Our guest is going to be, who is it? Alex Stein. It's going to
again
on a Nox Mente versus an obelisk.
Alex is fun.
And for the week after that, I'm working on some cool people. So
And we are getting Mel Crow back.
Yeah, she'll be back before Thanksgiving. And then
Amazing how much people really are wanting her to finish what she was on.
yeah, I want to hear it too. It's like, I want to hear all this shit. Get back in here. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Nish. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank
great
you,
having you.
Stacey. Thanks, Jerry, and everyone out there that listens in, and for the words that find the people.
Right. Smooth.